So most people don't get burned by contractors because they hired the wrong one. They typically get burned because they don't follow these 5 rules that we're going to share with you today.
If a contractor has ever changed price on you, disappeared for weeks, added change orders to things, this video is for you.
Great. So let's just start with rule number 1. So 1 point of contact equals 1 source of truth.
Yes, so these rules are all from personal experience, and this one recently, and for some context, I actually have my contractor's license myself. I'm a project manager in everyday life, so communication is a huge part of what I do. And I still made this mistake on one of our more recent projects. We hired this contractor who we worked with previously, and he was great. Previous projects, we've used him from everything from small rooms to huge houses, renovating huge houses, and things have gone well with him, so we decided to use him again. Since those last projects, he hired his own project manager. So he was kind of halfway involved in the conversations where he had, there was a project manager, there was all the various workers he had, plus himself that I was communicating with. And then they were all communicating back with me. And I think that just caused some miscommunications, some missing points. I was being told one thing by one person, another thing by another, and ultimately the buck stops with him. So whatever he says goes, and he wasn't always available. He relied on his project managers. So long story short, I think we ended up with how many change orders? At least
dozens.
5. Yeah, it was a lot of change orders. The scope was adjusting daily. Payments were being, he thought he was going to get paid at one point in time. We were paying at a different. And honestly, I don't think it was like, we still have a good relationship with him. It wasn't like, we did have a couple fights, but it wasn't that he was getting angry at us, but I think there was a mutual just miscommunications one after another that happened.
Yeah, there was definitely multiple points of friction, and it's a good thing, right? Because since we initially hired him and as his team grew, things started to break within his own business that we didn't experience from using him previously. So it's a great thing that his business is growing and scaling. Of course, for a partnership, we want our contractors to thrive so we can continue to give them business. But in the same breath, things were starting to break, like Kevin just mentioned, communicating through the project manager and then him and then them talking to each other, then talking to Kevin. It was a lot of he said in this case, and it just never goes over well. So the big takeaway here is that you want one voice, because multiple voices are going to create a lot of confusion. So something that we should have done, and a lesson learned, which I hope you take with you after this video, is whoever is the lead, and in this case it was Kevin is communicating with either just the project manager or just the GC. Alrighty, so rule number 2, the contract must be specific and everything needs to be spelled out. And this is something that we learned the hard way. I think if I could just jump in for a second, when we were going through the process of evaluating different contractors for our most recent renovation, we had a very wide scope of people. We had the guy that walked in with a notebook and pen and paper. We had someone that was using a project management software, and then somebody else that, took notes on pen and paper and kind of drafted up like a Word document per se of a contract when they got home. So we're dealing with a multiple array of different quotes and forms in which they were coming in.
And the price came exactly how you would expect that.
Correct.
The project manager was much more expensive, and the one who just roughly did it was a lot cheaper.
Correct. So a few things that should always be in your contracts is everything from who's responsible for pulling the permits, who's responsible for debris / trash like dumpster removal, cleanup during the project, especially if they're working in a space that's multi-unit and there are tenants occupying a space, or even if it's your personal home and you're renovating just a kitchen and bathroom and you're living in the home throughout that process.
Well, or in a situation we had, I had to make sure they came back to clean up before inspectors were coming by. Now, it's mid-project, of course it's a construction site, but it sets a bad precedent for inspectors. Is it absolutely necessary? No. Do a lot of tradespeople do that in general? Yes, but it wasn't really in our contract, so it was this little extra, oh, that's not a part of it. We're still in the middle of working, and that's extra work. That's time out of our day, which I understand, but I took the assumption that they would just do it. They were taking pride in their work and would just do it, which isn't always the case.
Right, and in that example as well, you don't want to raise any red flags to an inspector if the project looks like a junkyard. They're going to overanalyze and inspect and probably find something wrong.
And everything could be great with the work they did was fine. It would pass inspection. But when it's, if you're looking deep enough, I'm sure you'll find a small thing here or there.
Of course. And as the investor that's having the carrying cost in addition to paying for the contractors as the work is progressing, you don't want anything to slow down or delay any sort of approvals because of course you're paying for that on the back end. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, but back to the contracts, I think a lot of contractors, understandably, or just not just contractors, any trade, any person is not going to want to spend a ton of time writing up these super detailed contracts because it takes time, and time is money. So I think something I would do in the future is actually write it up myself and send it to them. They're probably going to come back with red lines or some merge document with whatever their contract is with what ours, but ultimately it's there to protect us as well as protect them. If we have a vague contract, I could be pushing them to do work that they weren't expecting to cover, and vice versa. They could be not doing work that I expected to be covered initially.
Right, and I think something that we got a little burned with most recently is not specifying the materials. So for example, they were responsible for like doors and hardware, and of course they picked the cheapest ones, but we felt we were paying a premium price. So you have to really iron out those details as well, because you don't want to ever leave a situation, and this goes for really anything in life, but you don't want to walk away with one person feeling like they won and another person feeling like they lost. You want it to feel like a win-win situation, and the more specific you could be over these what you don't think are big deals, it can really benefit the relationship in the end.
Yeah, the contract, I can't stress enough, is being one of the biggest lessons learned we have is the more detail. You can't have too much detail in a contract, all the way down to the materials you're using, not just the doors, but what type of flooring. Some flooring is easier than others. Some doors are easier than others. They might get frustrated if you pick something that is way more complicated to install than something that is super easy.
Right, totally. Yeah, so if the contract is vague, it's going to cost you aggravation and money.
Yeah. Rule number 3, demo first, scope second. This is something, I think this is going to be a controversial one because it's natural to want to get a scope for the whole, a quote for the whole work. Like, here's the room, let's get it done. How much is it going to cost? What we learned, and maybe this is more specific to our area, where we live, there's a lot of, in New England, there's a lot of 200-year-old homes, 100-year-old homes, even older than 200. And you never know what you're going to find behind these walls. So, and that's not fair to the contractor or you. And something we kind of learned the hard way is as they start tearing down walls, the price changed drastically. Even though we may have thought it wasn't that big of a difference, to them it was. And it doesn't really matter who's right. Ultimately, it came with a change order and it costs us. So something I think we're going to try moving forward is, okay, we're going to pay for demo, whether it's with that contractor or just a demo team, and it could be a generic demo team. We're going to get everything demoed, get it down to the studs, and now let's decide, what is this going to cost? You see everything. There's no surprises. Any change orders, let's get it done now. I think that's something we're going to try moving forward based off some lessons learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And we say all this coming from experience. Please please, please, if that's the route that you're going to go, you need to sort of be able to forecast your estimated costs. So
Right.
Kevin is really good at this, I would say, but no, it's really important.
But it comes with experience, like
Right.
you're saying. Like,
right. Like you don't want to do demo and then all of a sudden you're going to go, oh my God, I need to come up with $200,000.
yeah.
Like have that in the back of your mind, of course, before you demo.
Right.
walls.
And that may mean hiring people to give you those quotes, to give you a rough ballpark, knowing that it may go higher. Also, it may go lower. When you get down to the studs, you may realize that the situation is a lot easier than they anticipated. It can go
Right.
both ways. So yeah, that's something we want to look into. Keep in mind in these older houses, the electric usually needs to be replaced, the plumbing needs to be replaced, and how they're going to actually fish those wires through or the plumbing can make a huge difference in cost. Sometimes it's a day job, sometimes it could be a week job, and that's a huge price difference.
Right. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Alrighty, moving right along to rule number 4. So payments are earned throughout completion of work, not time.
Yeah, again, another thing we kind of learned the hard way. I mean, we had this in our contract, kind of. And a lot of these rules you'll find are closely tied together. Again, the detailed of contract, we wish we put an extra level there, but specifically around payments. Everyone has always heard, like, you don't pay everything up front. You might do a down payment and then partial when it's after demo, partial after drywall, and then the rest on completion or something along those lines. And we did have that, but again, the details. It was kind of, I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was split up like generally when 25% of the work is done, you pay one. When 50% of the work is done, you pay more. It was kind of very vague, and who's to define what that means? And
Right.
they felt they were halfway done, but I'm looking around thinking there's a lot more work to be done here. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of whose definition are we going off of? And I wish we put that in there. I wish we went through and specified, okay, we're going to pay you 50% when, or 75%, whatever's fair, after not just drywall, but it's drywall, tape, mud, you're ready to paint. Everything is done, you are ready to paint. Then before you start painting, we pay you. Or it's you get 100% of your payment, the final payment, when all the little nicks and everything are done. We had our contractor coming back, 3 or 4 times because of various things we found after. And I kind of wish we held back some payment to make sure those are covered. Now, granted, we had a good relationship with our contractor. I wasn't worried about him running away with money or anything. But I can't say that for everyone, right? You don't know necessarily who these people are.
Right.
It could.
And also the trouble that we had too, we had contracts signed for tenants to move in and the job wasn't done and we paid 100% of the money.
Right.
And was it like huge things? No, the tenant could still move in and it was fine.
But it was things we paid for.
Right, but exactly. It was things we paid for.
That should have been done.
That should have been done. And to be honest, it really wasn't fair to us to have been waiting because, it's not like he was like, oh, I'll be there tomorrow.
Right.
This got dragged out a month after.
We gave up our leverage is the
Correct.
key. Once we've paid everything, we had no more leverage. And even halfway through, once we paid that second, third, or whatever payment, you lose a little bit more leverage. And that's all you have for leverage. That contractor could decide, this is too much work, I'm walking off the job tomorrow. And I feel like I did 75% of the work, so I'm not going to give you anything back. Or they could say, like Julia's, it's not a high priority, I'll come back in a month. It's like, well, I already paid you for it. And what leverage do you have?
Zero.
Yeah, exactly. Again, in our case, everything got done, but it certainly was without
I've heard
the
horror
headaches.
stories from friends and other investors in the neighborhood. It's just...
Yeah.
You don't want to be in that position, and hindsight's 20/20, right? But if you can go into it with hopefully clear eyes with a couple of these tips, and I'm sure others, you'll be okay.
Sure. I mean, in a situation we did get burned, we were doing, we hired a pest control company. We paid everything up front for them to do various work, and they didn't even solve the problem, and we were out that money. That was it. We could try and get it back, but ultimately that money's gone.
I haven't heard from him.
Yeah, we haven't heard from him since paying him. So, I mean, granted, that was a much smaller bill, but the principle still stands.
Right. And then I think another thing that's important to cover when it comes to payments is on payment method. So if you're paying credit card, understand like what's the credit card processing fee, or if they're expecting ACH or checks.
A lot of trades either won't take credit card, or if they do, there's a fee associated with it. Almost all our trades do. If they do take a credit card, we personally do put it on a credit card because we'll get the points. It also adds a level of protection. There's usually protections that come with credit cards in case something happens. You don't get what you paid for, things like that. But it's extra points in our pocket, which is just kind of a nice sprinkle on top with the project. But I would say 75 to 80% of contractors and just trades in general don't take credit cards. So to Julia's point, how are you going to pay them?
Right. And I think another thing, for example, our plumber, it's always cash when it comes to them. However, that's a negotiation, right? Like if you're going to pay with cash, can you take a little bit off the top and you can probably get a more favorable price? That's how it's been for us. So pick and choose when you're going to use different payment methods, but also, be clear with your contractor on how you feel most comfortable coming up with the money. And rule number 5, protect yourself from damage and mistakes.
Yeah, so this is something that happened to us actually in this most recent renovation. These are old windows, again, old homes, 200 years old, and the windows were all fine. Although old, they're single pane, all fine. And the day they were looking, I think they were just bringing some tools up. They weren't even working. I come back and a window's broken. And they're immediately saying it was like that. And I don't think they did it on purpose. I'm assuming a ladder or something just bumped into it, or when they just bumped into a wall, the pane fell out. Maybe it was loose, it doesn't matter. But luckily I actually had a video where it was like, we just walked this together, and I took a video, and just by chance, and I was able to show that the window pane was still there. So they took ownership of it. Again, they weren't trying to get out of anything. I think they genuinely didn't think they did it. And luckily I had video proof, which kind of brings me to one of the points that I want to talk about on this rule is video everything. We did prior, even before any work was done, did prior videos. Every stage we were trying to do walkthrough videos. You never know when you're going to need to reference that video. Plus, it's kind of cool just to look back on, but it's protected us. With that window, another window got broken out. I think 3 windows got broken.
If I got $1 for every window that was broken, I wouldn't even need to be in real estate anymore. I'd be a rich woman.
It was,
I mean, it was, and again, honest.
The windows down here, most of them they took ownership over. But again, it was just this question of like, did we do it? Did a subcontractor do it? And luckily with all these videos we had, we were able to definitively say, you were the last ones here. This is the last video. No one has been here since.
Yeah, and I gotta take a minute to talk about these windows. So keep in mind, these are all like historic old single pane windows that had like 12 little separate panes in it. So you can imagine when like a hammer or just like the vibration from them banging and just like cracked one of them, how much of a pain in the neck that is to fix. And then another time, this is just more of a funny story, but they were throwing debris out the window into the dumpster from the second floor down, and it hit back.
It was like a 2x4, hit the corner, flipped over, you can imagine.
And then hit the downstairs unit that they weren't even working on, and it was like, oh, we broke another window. So yeah, anyways, things like that happen. They're silly mistakes, and of course, that's not a cost that you want to incur. So make sure that you're holding your contractor accountable if things like that happen.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that happened was they would make these creative decisions, take it upon themselves. It wasn't necessarily a change order, but they thought something would be better one way or another.
For example, like out of just their own conveniences.
Yeah, like there was a bathroom wall that they thought would have been better aligned with one of the beams and be easier to structurally hold it to. And it was a more convenient building situation, but it didn't work with the layout, and there's code for how far away a toilet needs to be from a wall, or how far away space you need with the vanity. And with their design, we broke all those codes. yeah, it was easier for them to build, but we weren't going to pass the inspection. So they had to tear down that wall and move it over a couple feet and put it where it's supposed to, which took a little bit of time and cost out of their money. But ultimately, they initially pushed us that they wanted us to pay for it. But I quickly pushed back on that one, that we have the plans. We had proper approved plans, and you chose to make a creative decision here to make it a little easier for yourself.
Exactly. So if you are still listening to this video, it's document everything. Everything needs to be documented, from your approved plans, anything that was in the permit, the contracts, everything has to be written down, and it needs to be shared across all of the different trades that you hire so everyone can be on the same page.
And to add to that, hold them accountable. I think if you start, the classic saying, you give someone an inch, they take a mile. I think if you start to give a little here, you give a little there, they're going to assume they can get away with a lot more than just that. Now, that doesn't mean be realistic with things. I think there's certain situations that it wasn't worth arguing over. You know, you had to pick your battles a little bit with these giant projects. There's going to be another argument. There's going to be another disagreement over the contract, over building materials. So pick and choose what you're fighting over. A recent quote we heard was, if you get out of your seat for every little issue, your legs are going to get tired. So you got to pick what you're going after.
Absolutely. And another kind of story to share is, like, our plumber ended up hitting like an electrical wire or something crazy. And it's like, well, who's responsible for that?
Right. The plumber should be, but we had a good relationship with the plumber and we are trying to salvage that. Luckily, I was able to fix it myself in a pretty simple way.
Don't do that at home.
Yeah, unless you know what you're doing. But again, it was one of those things I was trying to help out a trade that we work closely with. We use them for all our houses for heating and plumbing. And it was something easy I could just fix without having to charge them, and they were appreciative. And they also cover us on things sometimes that, you know, they noticed that was broken on our end and they would just fix. So there is a relationship aspect, there is a give and take a little bit, and you kind of just learn that as you work with various contractors along the way.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll leave you with, this isn't necessarily one of our 5 rules. I wish we had talked about it earlier, but these contracts are in place to also keep yourself accountable. So make sure you're paying on time and all of your money clears, because I promise you, everybody within the trades talk. The electrician knows every plumber out there. Every plumber knows every GC and builder. They all know each other, and you do not want that reputation of being a pain in the neck and not having your money clear. So as much as all of this advice is to keep your contractors accountable, it's also for you as well. You have to kind of hold your end of the bargain here.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So that's all we got for this video today. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see other videos like this, comment below what you'd like to see. We're just a husband and wife, active owners of 10 units, $4 million in real estate, trying to figure it out, honestly. And these are just hard lessons learned that we've had. We have so many great stories, so many great just raw experiences, and we'd like to share them with you and hopefully save you a couple bucks by learning these hard lessons.